I'm so happy to have you here. I'm so happy that there are so many people that registered. We are having former students, we are having alumni, we are having future students. So, and we have also people that are not in contact with us yet. So, I am Marius Mihailescu. I'm managing partner of Tiffin University. And Tiffin University decided to start a series of webinars in which we will try to figure out methods, reasons, and aspects that need addressing in this period. I have to thank also our media partner, Business Review Magazine, that helped us in promoting this webinar. And I would like the attendees to know that they should ask questions to our panelists through the Q&A. We will follow also the chat, but we would prefer if you would do it through the Q&A. And this way it will be easier for us to address them and know to what questions we answered and to which we didn't. As you can see, we are here 4 panelists. I'm just an introductory panelist. They are all business leaders. They are all experts. They are coming, all of them are coming from different backgrounds. And I will present to you Joseph Takacs, that is a management professor in our program. He's also a PhD in management. So he has also an academic background, but he's also more than 40 years in business, a business leader, mostly in tourism and in hospitality, but I presume that those are not the only entrepreneurial projects that he had. We are having here also Meredith. Hello, Meredith.
Hi.
She's a serial entrepreneur, and part of her projects became also award-winning. One of them was the award of Central Texas on catering companies. And the business name is Let Us Do the Cooking. And I'm sure that you will tell us a lot of this business. And the last but not least, it's Chris Erd, that he's a business and the leader. He is a speaker that will impress many of you on TEDx community. So he's also a coach on TEDx community. He is more than 30 years a strategist and a growth expert that still remains, I presume, even after 30 years, he still remains passionate to develop people, businesses, and so on. So those are the backgrounds of our panelists of today. And we are hoping that you will take notes in order to let us know what you want us to do in the future. And I will give you also, let's say, an incentive. Everybody that got registered today will benefit of a 5% discount on any educational project that we will organize from now on. And the ones that will contact us by the end of the month will receive a 10% discount, mainly on our Master of Business Administration, but not only, because we will have many other projects. So because you didn't came here to listen to me, I will let Joe take over. Joe, take over the stage, please.
Buonasera, Marius. Thank you. And good morning to those of you in the US. So I'm trying to do my part over here, and I want to show you a screen, if I might. I want to share my screen with you, if I can figure out how to do that. Hold on. So here's what I'm working on. These are all websites, and treehuggers.com, flowingdata.com, The Verge, Fast Company, Insider, Blitz Results, Modern Survival, web.mit, MIT, the university, The Bomb, Kiss Casper, and my 3 favorites, which you'll now know what's going on here, controlenroll.com, gonumber2.com, and toiletpaperhistory.com. So why did I do that? what's going on with toilet paper? I mean, seriously, how can we be out of toilet paper? It doesn't fix anything, and yet we are. The psychologists all say it's control. And it's one of the things, there are many out of control right now. And that's in its simplest fashion. And I was looking at it to see, do I have too much toilet paper? I'm just being honest. And I started to do the math and I thought, I don't really want to do this math. How many sheets? So why did I do that? 1994. Got on a plane. I was the president of the largest timeshare management company in the world at the time. I enjoyed about 2 decades there. And I got on a plane and I didn't feel well. But we were negotiating a new contract and I had to fly up to North Carolina from Florida where I live. And, no one can do it but me because I'm the best in the world. And I just had to go myself. It doesn't matter how bad I was feeling. At least that's what I thought. So I got to North Carolina a day early because I want to make sure there's no travel issues. And it wasn't happening. I mean, I was bad. So I called and got a couple other people up there and I flew home. This was October of 94. And I called my wife, Dana, and I flew home and I said, yeah, honey, I'm really feeling bad. And I got home and she took my temperature. Now, mind you, I had a connection. I flew home from North Carolina, not terribly long flights, an hour and a half, couple hours apiece. My temperature's 105. And Dana called the doctor and said, we think this is arguably a little bit high. And the doctor said, oh, no, go straight to the emergency room, which we did. I ended up in ICU, intensive care, with 105, 106 for a week, 6 days. And I remember very little. There's people to this day that swear, I made them put it in writing that they came to visit me. I absolutely do not remember. 106 temperature for a week. All the things you hear on, painfully on the news today, I had them all. ARDS, adult respiratory distress syndrome, had it. Double pneumonia, respiratory failure multiple times. Probably only by the grace of God and my loving wife am I here. More God, of course. But I tell you, that was a defining moment for Joe Takacs, realizing that there's just a lot of stuff I don't have control of. And I know all of you have those markers if you look back through your past, but that's when I came to grips with, hey, there's only so many things I can do. There's things I can control in my life and things I can't control in my life. And we're going through some times now where there's a lot we cannot control. And that's when I learned in 94 when I tried to die, that there really are things that I cannot control. And it's been an absolute blessing to me, among other lessons, to learn that. Meredith Viguers, tell us about you.
So it wasn't that long ago that I remember the overwhelming feeling, I'm done. I cannot work another 80-hour work week. And dear God, if I sit down at this computer one more time on a Friday afternoon to do payroll, just praying that people wait until Monday to cash their checks, I can't handle the stress anymore. Does this sound familiar to you and your business? It was me just a few short years ago. And what's crazy is at the exact same time, we were the poster child for the Chamber of Commerce on how you start this small home-based business and grow it into a huge success. Only 10 years and 100 employees later, that success was my nightmare. I didn't know any better, so when I built the business, I built it with all roads leading to my office. Something had to give. I couldn't keep going that way. So I decided to go to a workshop, the kind that you go to when you just want to be around positive people. Well, I spent that entire week complaining about this business I built that I no longer liked. It wasn't until the very last day that it finally hit me upside the head that I had the ability to change my mind. Change my mind. And that started me on a journey. Thousands of hours and dollars later, I realized that in order for the business to grow, I had to grow. And as I started growing and the business grew with me, then I was able to really start developing my people. And in developing my people and getting them to a point where they could do the things that I needed them to do, the only thing left was for me to get out of the way. I'm Meredith Viguers, and I help traditional small business owners that are frustrated and stuck. They want to grow their business, but they need to do it more profitably and with less of their own time. And the only way to do that is by building a dream team. So whether you are just getting started, you're totally in survival mode right now, or you're ready to grow, if you're willing to change your mind, develop your people, and get out of the way, you can have a massively successful business. And I know what you're thinking, because people ask me all the time, hey, Meredith, can this actually work for me in my business? And the answer is, of course it can. You see, I used to be the mom that missed every baseball and football game. I was the wife that wasn't available for my husband, and I was the business owner that had no energy for my staff because I was exhausted all the time. Today, I'm the Mimi who has the cutest granddaughter in the world that I get to love on anytime I want to. My husband and I have more quality time than we've ever had before, and my staff and I are working on legacy projects that actually energize us. You know, when I grew up and went to high school, I went to a performing arts school, and I might be dating myself here, but if you've ever seen the show Fame, that was kind of the school I went to. So we took our academic classes in the morning, and in the afternoon, I was a dance major. So I was in ballet or jazz type classes. And the first week of school, every year, we had Nutcracker auditions because we performed that at Christmas time, year in and year out. Well, this was my senior year, and I went to that audition, and I remember feeling pretty good about it. And at the very end of the audition, our teacher said, would anyone like to come to the center of the floor and show us fouette turns? Now, this turn is a little bit difficult, especially on pointe shoes. And I knew that I might be able to do one or two, but probably not very well. So I decided just to wait. And we saw the girls that we all knew could do them. And then they said, does anyone else just want to try? And that day, I chose to stand in the corner. I felt good about the audition, and I wanted to leave it on that note, although a couple of people did try. It wasn't until the following week when the cast list went up, and every single person who attempted the turn got the part I wanted, and I didn't. And they performed it beautifully by the time the performance came around, and I vowed to myself that very day that I would never let an opportunity come into my life without taking action on something that I wanted. We're in a period of time right now that the action takers will reap the rewards. So if you're thinking today, I'm standing in the corner, maybe it's time to attempt something. Action takers today will be rewarded. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and jump. I dare you. Chris?
Hey, thanks again, everybody, for allowing us this opportunity. And I'm the type of person that I really absolutely want to see the potential in people be untapped, if you will, and tap into that and bring out the value. Years ago, I used to work as an executive director / pastor for a worldwide nonprofit organization. There was a lot of times where I was traveling. And if you've ever flown, you know that there's FAA rules and guidelines that you have to listen to. And so reluctantly, I took my headphones off and I was listening go through about the fact that in the unlikely event of a water landing, your bottom seat will act as a flotation device. I don't ever want to try that. But it got to the point where in the unlikely event of the loss of cabin pressure, the oxygen mask would come down, and you're supposed to put it on yourself first and then take care of the people around you. I had an epiphany that day. That moment, as much traveling as I had done, that I had to take care of myself first before I was able to take care of anybody else. In leadership and in business, the owner, the executive leadership, And employees as well need to take care of themselves before they can take care of the business as well as the customers. And so in this epiphany, this has become a little bit of my mantra in making sure that I take care of who I am, because you know what? We've all heard it said, you can't pour from an empty cup. Good morning again, or good evening again, everybody. I'm Chris Yard. I'm a business consultant, and I started my business a little over 5 years ago, even though I have all the experience in leadership and working with businesses and helping grow businesses. It wasn't until I was working for a foster care adoption agency a few years ago where I was bringing up some amazing ideas to kind of really grow the company from inside. And it wasn't going anywhere. There was a lot of positive things going on, but it got to the owner of the company who said, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. I like the company the way it is. So to Meredith's point about jumping, I decided to make a jump, and I ended up reading my final paper of my master's degree. I wrote a case study kind of on this organization I was working for. And my final professor reached out to me and said, listen, Chris, you need to be a business consultant. You need to bring your experience, your passion for people, and this knack for developing people and their businesses, and you need to be on your own as a consultant. Well, let me tell you, everybody, I am not a risk taker. So this whole idea of jumping out of a perfectly good airplane to parachute is not in my vocabulary whatsoever. So, but I did this. I did it because I felt that it was my purpose. It was my calling in life to develop people, to tap into that potential that had not been tapped in before. You know, even to this point where successfully, by bringing a consultant in, it's amazing how you get to literally work and help change individuals' mindsets, not only with the CEO or the owner, but all the way down to the employee. And what you do is you're working from the top and you're working from the employees and you're merging them together. And all of a sudden, the organization is moving on all of its cylinders. They're moving through the direction, their why, their purpose of why they exist. A lot of the times we get focused on the, on the grass, and we're never seeing the vision of why the business was created, why we're making those widgets, why it was excited to get into business in the first place, and or take that leap into business. So I just want to share that with you guys as a little bit of a background, and I will say this to you. There's a lot of times where we think, well, let me say it this way. There's a lot of times where we're passionate about providing a service. And a lot of the times the foundational pieces for a business, for developing that and developing people, are not solidified. And therefore, the business will only go X amount of time. There's a statistic put out by Forbes a few years ago that 80-some-odd% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. That's primarily the reason why. And so for me, I can tell you that we've gone beyond that 5-year mark. I'm really excited about that. But what excites me even more, and I don't use an alarm clock to wake up, is the fact that I get to wake up every morning making an impact, not only in people's lives personally, but in their business. So again, I want to say thanks again for everyone being on the call today. Those that are on the Zoom, or those that are watching Facebook Live. For the next 15-20 minutes or so, we're going to tackle some universal questions. Joe, Meredith, and I are going to go back and forth, and I'm actually going to start with Joe here. So Joe, share with us a little bit in a general manner what you're seeing, experiencing within the United States right now, and maybe across the world.
Thank you, Chris. You're going to hear a very consistent theme from the three of us today, and talking about ourselves. So Florida, let me say this so we don't leave the wrong impression with anybody. We're all in the same storm, guys, but we're not in the same ship. We're in different places, even within the United States. I happen to live in Florida. Florida is 3/4 of the way to wide open now. The haircut, the barbers opened this week. The restaurants were open last week. We're at 50% capacity now. But there's 2 cities in Florida, Orlando and Miami, that aren't open at all still. I saw this morning in California that all the schools are closed all the way through the fall semester. So we don't presume, and I can tell you, I've had to tell myself multiple times that everybody's in a different place right now, both in where they live and how this is affecting them. and who they are and how they feel about it. So Florida, Chris, I mean, we've been relatively untouched here. You know, Dana and I came from Italy in late January, early February, and then we were in Washington State with our baseball playing son. So at least with respect to what's going on to COVID, we've been largely unaffected directly where we happen to live. How about you, Meredith? What's going on in Texas?
Yeah, so Texas is probably at the 50% or so mark in terms of being open right now. Texas is a very business-friendly state, so it's always our endeavor to do things that work for the business community. However, that being said, we personally have had many people in our inner circle that have been affected by COVID. We have known people that have passed away from it. We've known others that have recovered from it. So it's kind of been all over the map. A little bit different perspective here, and just for the audience so that you understand my family dynamics. My husband and both of my older boys are all first responders. So my oldest son is in the military, but he's military police, and my husband and my middle son are both firefighters and paramedics. So they are seeing what's going on kind of on the front lines every day, although I will say Texas, by and large, has been very minimally affected compared to some other areas of the US. That being said, as it pertains to a business perspective, a broader background on my business, I currently own 3 companies. I own Let Us Do the Cooking, as Marius mentioned, which is we specialize in large events. So catering and events company that specializes in groups of 500 people or more. Obviously not happening right now. I also own a honey company. That company is growing by leaps and bounds at the moment because, and I assume this is somewhat universal, things at grocery stores are flying off the shelf. So that company has seen expansion. And then also, and only history will tell whether I'm a genius or an idiot, I decided to launch a brand new consulting package in the midst of this. It's work I've done with small business owners over the last few years, but I just decided to put a new curriculum to it, and it happened to launch right in the middle of COVID. So that's where we are at the moment. We're seeing optimism, though, in the state of Texas. I can tell you that people here are excited to be able to resume whatever normal is going to look like from this point on, because I don't believe we're going to go back to what we thought normal was before. But, you know, one thing that I find myself doing right now, and for everyone listening, you may or may not have heard the statement, what you focus on grows. So right now I am choosing to focus on the things that I can control. And so my focus right now is largely on my consulting business because I can control what I do with that. It's largely via Zoom, it's online, and that piece I can move forward. I cannot decide for the government when they're going to let large groups meet again. So that's kind of the approach that I'm taking, but I know that we're optimistic in this area that as things start to open up, we're gonna start to feel a little bit normal again. Chris, what does it look like in Arizona?
You know what, we're a lot like you there in Texas, probably more of the southwestern states as well. People are optimistic. You know, the moment we close to lower the curve, people have been kind of like, you know, well, it's not affecting us as much as it is on the eastern seaboard or the western seaboard. So let us get back to work. At the same time, people have learned to do things a little bit different. They've adjusted, they've adapted, they've pivoted. And so people are optimistic. Business is open now. And as far as I know, the governor here is allowing the stay-at-home order to expire as of the 15th, which was yesterday. You know, at the same time, though, talking about businesses, I'm finding from where I sit, people are learning to adapt. They know that there's going to be a new norm. And while that's kind of an overused statement, you know, it's exactly what Joe said, Meredith, and that's we're all in the same ocean, but we're in different ships. You know, people are further along. People are still on the shoreline. They don't want to get moving. And so one of the things that I want to share with people is, as I'm still working with people at this moment, working with businesses, we're helping people. Our company here is helping people literally adapt to what's going on. For example, there's a client I'm working with that is not only in the US, but in Canada. And we're helping them with processes, their people, and they're looking at opening up a day camp. So while everyone else is closing their day camps for the summer, they're positioned right now to open. And according to budget, what's really cool is we're going to help them financially by $1.4 million between June and August. That's amazing. That's what businesses are supposed to do. That's what the leaders are supposed to do in businesses. So, the people, regardless of what's going on in their state and or their country, there are things that we can do. The worst thing to do is to sit at home on the couch waiting for something to happen. Because as Joe and Meredith have both said, people, there are things that we can control. And while we're navigating these uncharted waters, you do have control over your life, where you work, and what you want to do within the parameters. So hopefully you're setting yourself up today for success tomorrow. Meredith, I mentioned the word pivot. Talk to us a little bit about pivoting in a world right now that can be filled with so many unknowns.
Yeah, so this is where being a risk taker actually does come into play. So I'll just say, just so that you guys know, and I'm sure you can already tell, we're all three very different personalities. So when Chris said he's not a risk taker, he doesn't want to jump out of a perfectly good plane, I'm completely the opposite. I'll jump out without a parachute and hope that some way or another I build wings on the way down, right? So we are completely opposite when it comes to that perspective. But regardless, in this particular market, it is so important for every business owner to tap in to the creative side of what they do. And so like for us, let us do the cooking, lost 95% of our revenues overnight. We were literally, in fact, the three of us were together at a meeting in Dallas on March 10th. I drove home that night, and on March 11th, my business came to a screeching halt. And so it was time at that point that I went, I have over 100 employees. I've got 3.5 acres of land with a 5,000 square foot operations facility. Like we have serious overhead, right? And I saw a question in the chat about tourism. We're in the same boat, right? And we have no control over when the government is going to allow those things to come back. So a couple of the things that we had to do. Number one, we had to very quickly develop an online ordering system for a meal service so that people could come pick up meals. Then we started offering lunch deliveries to offices that were still going to have people working in them. We waived all the delivery fees, anything we could do to keep food moving out the door, because as long as orders were coming in, I could keep my core staff employed, keep someone answering the phones, keep our name in the public eye. And that is what's really important during this time. And I'll come back to it in a second. But the other piece that was pivotal for us is we started thinking, okay, there is a lack of businesses that are open to order these meals. We can do this meal service, but it's going to bring in a small percentage of the money we're used to having come in. What else can we do? So we thought, a lot of people want to thank a first responder right now. They want to thank people that are working in hospitals, thank people that are stocking grocery store shelves, truck drivers, things of that nature. So we set up a donation feature, so that the people who were sitting at home could then make donations to have food delivered to an emergency room staff, a fire station, a police station, all of these different things. And what we found is when we did that, we opened a window for revenue to continue to come in. And then that also landed us some free press. And this is important right now, guys. If you are not marketing to your client base, even while you're closed, you are losing ground. And so it is really, really important to stay fully engaged in your social media, even when you're frustrated. It is really important to stay top of mind. It is really important to be honest with your customers. I got online on social media and told our catering customers, I said, look, guys, here's the reality of the situation. We're trying to keep our doors open. Here's how you help us do this. We've been in business for 14 years. We've got a great following in our community, but they needed to know that if they didn't support us in this time, our doors might not stay open. So it was really important for us to be brutally honest with them about what was actually happening in our world. So those things that we've been able to do, don't get me wrong, they don't replace what we would have had coming in, okay? So there's some other things that we're doing. We're pivoting into different markets. We're looking at ways that we can utilize our staff to fulfill other services in our community. I have to be careful about going into too many details because I've signed some non-disclosure agreements, but we have staff that is going to start to operate in a different capacity because we have great people. And when you have great people, there are so many different things that you can do to pivot a business, and they will fall into the places you need them to move that thing forward. So creativity is massive at this time, but please, please, please do not lose sight. If you are an existing business, especially, and you're trying to just kind of survive right now, you have to be in full-on marketing mode, whether you can sell your product and service right now or not. It doesn't matter if you're actually open. You've got to stay top of mind. You have to be in your customers' peripheral vision at all times. They should be a little bit sick of you, to be honest, because they should see you so much on their social media feed and in their inboxes and, you know, all of those kind of things, just communicating with them on a daily basis. So that's been it for me. And I know Joe's in a very similar situation. So Joe, what have you guys done during this time?
Yeah, Meredith, the plane that you jumped out of and Chris is hanging onto the pole for dear life, well, I got pushed out of. So our business went literally to zero about the same time as yours. I mean, it was 10 days into March, and we literally lost all our income, 100%. What I do is sell timeshare, so we're on resort properties that are now closed, and they're still closed. So there was no theory that we were going to get back in front of people, at least not momentarily. So to your point, Meredith, and we had to start to look at ways. And first of all, we've greatly increased our marketing to your point with our customers and what's going on. People are still buying. I mean, they're not to the extent they were before because it's always better in person. Historically, it's better in person. But I want to touch on one thing that both of you have hit on really, really hard. And I want to tell I'm a story guy. So there's a wrestling coach, right? And he's got team members, and this happens to be one where they bet on who's going to win the wrestling match. So I'm watching this, and one guy, we'll call him the guy in the red trunks, and then the guy in the white trunks. And, you know, the guy in the red trunks will win 2 days in a row, and then the guy in the white trunks will win 1 day, and then he'll win 3 days in a row. And this guy, the coach, who was betting on them, always knew. I said, look, dude, you know every time. You win 100% of the bets. And these guys are the same size. They're both muscular like I am. I'm glad I can't hear everybody laughing. But how do you know who's going to win? I mean, how do you, because there's no pattern, there's no rhyme or reason. And he said, oh, Joe, it's very easy. Whoever wins is the one I'm feeding. So think about that. And you know, Meredith talked about it, and so did Chris. What are we doing? What are we feeding ourselves? Because I can't, and let me tell you, I had a rough couple days when all of our resorts closed and everybody had to go home, and all the people, so my 25 employees are now with zero income, myself included. That's not fun for a couple days. But the steps you have to take, and what you're hearing from all three of us, is you have to be positive. What are you focusing on? And I had to get myself back, Meredith, to your point, and Chris, to yours. I had to get, okay, so what can I do? I can still talk to my people. We are going to reopen. I don't know when it is, but we're going to reopen. And that's what we've had. And you know, because you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. I mean, we're all wrestling our way through, you know, trying to get to the other side of this in a positive way. You gotta feed yourself positively. I don't like to read. I'm embarrassed to say that, but I just don't enjoy it. But I got a hold of, it's called Blink List, and it's fantastic. It's a Cliff Notes, a little bit expanded, but it's a Cliff Notes, and I read it every day. And it was one thing that I did. What can I do for Joe? Because I can't give what I don't have. Chris, you mentioned that earlier. So how can I be as strong as I can as the owner of the company to support my family and my employees? And Chris, is that what you're seeing out there in the other businesses? I mean, Meredith and I business aren't the only ones that got torpedoed here. What are you seeing out there as you're talking to the business owners?
Well, let me say it this way. Probably, I'm going to go on a limb here and say 100% of all businesses have struggled in some way, form, or fashion. They just have. Because they didn't think that this was going to affect them, and or it wasn't going to affect them in the way in which it has affected them. Now, I think of people, larger companies like Tesla and Dyson, the vacuum cleaner company, that literally adapted or pivoted their business model for a brief moment to make ventilators, to be not only here in the US, but around the world. So people are accepting of help. They want help. I think there's another portion of people out there that are just going to wait this out. And to what most people are saying is things are not going to go back, for the most part, the way it used to be. Even with restaurants opening and all of that, where you're wearing masks and gloves and all of that type of thing, and there's only a certain percentage of seating. So I know that the companies that I'm currently working with, they haven't skipped a beat. We saw this coming. We pivoted. I asked them some difficult questions. They haven't lost one employee. They've revamped processes to be 4, 5, 6 months down the road ahead of everybody else. So, when we talk about what people are wanting to do is they want, I think, the assistance. They want to know that everything, A, is going to be okay. And that B, somewhere down the road, back to your point, Joe, with the toilet paper, they want some sort of control. This is something that we can't control. And so even in a business, people want that control. And if you as the business owner, or even you as the employee, are struggling with what's going on right now, think of everybody else around you and what's happening. Just a quick story for you. There was someone that I was meeting with last week, and come to find out, there was a lot of infighting, a lot of people that I attributed to stress. But as I'm listening, by asking some really good questions, I come to find out that there were some struggles happening at home, as well as the lack of individuals, humanity, not having control over this situation, and looking to leadership to help them with this. And leadership didn't know what was going on either. So it gave me a perfect opportunity to start talking with leadership and let them know, listen, I'm going to start working with your your employees one-on-one, kind of figuring out what's really going on. I'm going to bring some of that with no names attached to you so that you can help better understand what's going on in their life. What it boiled down to was people were bringing baggage from home to work and bringing baggage from work to home. They weren't dropping it off anywhere. And so it was just accumulating on their shoulders. And at some point in time, the dam broke and there was just floodgates. And so we literally had like a come to Jesus meeting with everybody. And then I brought leadership into it once the employees were satisfied. So what we're looking at is back to leadership and back to you as a business. And there's different types of leadership. So people are looking for help. It might be you as an employee. It might be you as a business owner. People are looking for direction. You've got to give it to them. And if they're not going to get it from you, someone that they know, like, and trust, they're going to go get it from somebody else. And so with that, we've got to be really, really careful with that. And so this is part of the mental capacity. It's kind of getting people in a mind shift or a reset of mind. And I've been sharing this lately with people, and I want to share this with you all here. This is a perfect opportunity to not only reinvent yourself, but reinvest yourself. Take the time, take the moments that you've been given to really, truly figure out what your core values are, not only personally, but business-wise, and make the most of it. So reinvest in yourself. Joe, like for you, with what I had shared, what kind of plan do you have for coming out with opening your business as parts of the US Open?
A couple of key points, Chris, because first of all, what I had to grapple a little bit with is that I got to have one. I mean, I'm listening to Meredith and I'm thinking, wow, that's the same thing going on for me. And, she has no idea when she's going to cater a 500-person event again. And even as of, 5 o'clock yesterday, some of our resorts are saying, well, we're not sure if we're going to open in 2 weeks, and maybe the governor of Massachusetts is going to put it off till June. And, you know, that's all well and good, Chris. I still have to have a plan. I mean, I still have to your point, either I'm going to try to lead or someone else is going to. And I have to have a confidence of going out there and putting that plan together. I have to be honest, Chris and Meredith, both with myself, especially, hey, what can we do? What are we gonna, what's realistic? I have to be, in fact, brutally honest. And I gotta know numbers, right, Meredith? I mean, you gotta know your business, man. I mean, you gotta, what those costs are there any that you can trim without being stupid? Are the volumes gonna come back? And there are a myriad of unknowns. But I still have to have, and let those employees know, at least mine, that, hey, we are going to open. We are going to be back. We're going to be in business. My company's MVP. We're going to be fine, or one of them. And you know, and that's, and obviously I got to reduce that to writing, which we are. And here's the interesting one for us. And then I want to ask you a question, Meredith. We're trying to figure out, because the way we sell is we have a group of people in a room. There's a real bad idea right now, right? I mean, let's see how many people we can pack in a room and put them at a table. So but we're going through the mental gymnastics of separating the people and having the tables farther apart. But one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to innovate, is a Zoom studio. So at the same time that we are maybe presenting to 3 or 4 couples in the room, we're also going to do it over Zoom and at the same time. So if we have a customer at a resort that I'm just not comfortable with, you know, coming down there with, even though we have masks and et cetera, well, then they can watch that presentation virtually. And they're there at the resort. That's one of those things that we're trying to pivot and say, hey, how can we still do what we do, people want a vacation, and still help people, respecting everything that's going on. Meredith, are you scared? That's what I wanted to ask you.
You know what? I wouldn't use the word scared, right? Because I think that fear has the capability to paralyze you if you allow it.
Absolutely.
So the word that I would use is, on some days it's hesitant. On other days, well, and let's just be really honest with you. There have been moments that I have been scared. Yes, absolutely. To say any different would be denying our human capacity to feel different emotions. For the first couple of weeks, I was terrified because there was so many unknowns at that point, right? And I think this is the biggest thing that we get to as entrepreneurs is, generally speaking, and anybody in the business world, when you're trying to forecast, when you're trying to plan, the worst possible scenario is unknown. If we know it's all going to go to hell, at least we know what that looks like, and then we can start gearing towards it, right? But if we have no clue which direction it's going to go, if you're anything like me, I have planned out every single possible scenario that my mind can come up with and how I will react to that scenario. So there have been moments that I've been scared. I've also conditioned myself over the years to not let myself stay in that mindset, right? And this is a really important part. You guys heard me say earlier, one of the things that I do with all of the entrepreneurs that I work with is the first step in growing a business as the business owner is to get control of your own mind. You have to change your own mind and condition your thinking to be able to move forward. Because when fear comes in, and it does, and fear and faith, by the way, can exist at the same time, all right? So I know people have talked about, oh, if you're fearful, you can't have faith that it's gonna work. That's crap. You can actually have both existing at the same time, and sometimes it takes a healthy level of fear to really dive into that faith and move forward anyway. But if you, as the business owner, as the leader of an organization, have not conditioned yourself to get out of that mindset as soon as you recognize that it is there, then you will stay paralyzed in it. So I think it's really important to understand that we all feel the gamut of emotions, right? There have been times over this last 6 weeks that I have had some really low lows and I've had some really high highs and everything in between. The most important thing that I can do though is to take a step back and go, okay, is this emotion that I'm feeling right now healthy? And if it's not, how do I very quickly change my mind to get myself out of this thought process so that I can then move something forward? So, fear is a natural emotion. Being scared can come about. I do not let myself stay there very long. Chris,
Hey, Chris,
yeah, I was going to say,
Meredith, go ahead.
In terms of just that fear factor with the business owners that you're working with, and I'm conscious that we need to get to some people's questions, so I want to keep this moving. But what are you seeing as a general emotion from the business owners that you're working with?
I think at first there is an aspect of fear that just, I can't control this. What do I do? Really, what do I do with my people? What do I do with my employees? How do I pay them? Quickly, and really what it is when I reach out to them, or they reach out to me, but it was at first I reached out to them and I said, what can we do? What is your first thought? And it really goes back to your comment, Meredith, is about changing the mindset. Even if you are an amazing entrepreneur, business owner, employee, we all face those human emotions. And so it's almost like, okay, you've experienced it. Now what are we going to do with it? Right? And so if you're willing to get in the boat and get into this ocean that's uncharted territory, then let's get in. I'll get in with you. So I think that as people recognize that they have someone in their corner, such as a consultant, a coach, a mentor for their business, I think that people start to ease up on that fear a little bit, but you've got to get them to that point at first.
Great thought.
What we're going to do, so everybody knows, we're very respectful of your time. Because we want to give you one point each at the end of this. So right up on the 7 o'clock hour in Romania, or noon Eastern time if you're in the U.S. And you can do the other hours. But we're gonna hit some Q&A now for probably about 10 minutes. We will give you one thing that's really critical for each of us that we'd like it to leave with. And then we're going to stay, not forever. We're going to stay probably for 3 or 4 questions after the hour, just so you know how this is going to play out from here. So, Chris, continue where you were going, because one of our questions, it talks about how do you not let this rub off on your family? I mean, because you were talking about the baggage and, whether I take it from work to home or home to work. And somebody acknowledged that and said, hey, there's at times, what we carry as business owners is pretty heavy. Sure. How do I compartmentalize that in your mind of, because it's real. So, it's not fake. I mean, it is real. So what do you got any pointers there that?
I have opinions, only because I think it's wisdom, but I also don't want to give someone the wrong impression because it doesn't fit within their personality, their style. For me, I have a wife and 4 children, all teenage. One of them is graduating this weekend. And I'll tell you this from a personal level as a dad and as a husband, I talk with them about it. I talk with them through it. And I let them know what to hold on to, what not to hold on to. And while I'm conversing with them, and this is what's absolutely key, there's a difference, folks, between hearing people and listening. And if we hear people, we're letting those words, those emotions, we understand that, but that's really what it does. We don't do anything with it. When we listen, we're listening with the intent to understand and not necessarily respond at that moment. So for me, I take that as a consultant and I take that into the workplace, and I'm actually teaching people how to listen to one another. John Maxwell wrote a book, Everybody Communicates, Few Connect. I've taken that as a mantra right now because we really need to take it that extra step and connect with people. So I would say this, Joe, just to kind of wrap up my time. With that being said, my one point that I want everyone to take away with is this: know yourself, respect yourself, listen to yourself, It might be that in addition to hearing and listening, that you're exercising and you're, we're not eating out of habit or necessity, and we're eating out of necessity, but not eating out of habit because we're quarantined at home, those types of things. But know yourself. Find out what your oxygen mask does. Find out what your purpose is. And when you do that, you're being intentional with who you are, where you work, if you're going to be a business owner, if you already are, and then you're going to be intentional because you've done it with yourself, with everybody else. Meredith?
Yeah, so here's what I'll say on that question, and then there's another one that I'm seeing that I want to hone in on. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. What I would say with this is I am not built to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. I need people to support me. And for years and years, my catering company has been in business for 14 years. We had a restaurant open for 5 of those years, and I did not want to share with my husband the burdens of those businesses because I didn't want to worry him. So I carried them. Can I tell you that when I carried those burdens, I was sick. I was tired constantly. I did not perform at a high level, and I was not good for anyone around me. So it's really important that you share those things with your family, but you be very upfront with them in a way to say, look, I'm not sharing this with you because I even need an answer. I don't need solutions. I simply need you to understand what I'm going through. And so we have that talk on a regular basis. My husband and I have a no BS rule in our house. We are allowed to share brutal honesty about how we're feeling and what's going on, with the expectation that I don't need you to solve this for me. I just need you to let me get it out. And so if you can set some ground rules like that with your family, I think it helps massively. So Joe, do you have anything to add on that particular question? If not, I want to dive into another one.
Go for it.
Okay, so Marie asked the question, do you have tips for closing the sale when you have a group of people on Zoom? I'm used to a one-to-one experience when you can chat to answer questions, and I feel like the Zoom group interrupts that flow. Okay, so let me preface my answer with this. I'm the bulldog of the 3 of us, and I may say things in a very blunt way that could upset some people. So if that's you, I'll apologize in advance, but I promise I'm a nice person afterwards. Let me challenge the thought process that a Zoom group interrupts that flow, because you've already set a limitation before you've even walked into the experience. And if you walk into an experience with a limiting thought before you even go into the room, you've sabotaged yourself. So what I would look at with that is, if you're used to being one-to-one, do one-to-one Zoom meetings if that makes you feel more comfortable. But I can tell you the events that I have been part of in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've been part of several online workshops, seminars, courses, all of the above. On average, the sales at those events that used to be in person, number one, their attendance is more than double what it typically is, because nobody has to travel. Nobody even has to change out of their pajamas if they don't want to. They can get online, they can attend an event, and the sales have on average gone up 50% over what they would have been at that online in-person event. And that is because people are pivoting their businesses online. So if you're a business owner that's watching this, and I know that I don't know most of you, so I'm not sure who that applies to, right? But if you're a business owner that's watching this and you have not created any version of your product suite to go online, you're missing the boat right now. You have got to take something you do, and I know we had someone in the travel industry asking questions. Get online and do videos about the favorite places that you travel. Start a subscription for people to follow you to plan their next 5 years worth of vacations. We're doing online cooking classes right now. If you have not taken your traditional brick and mortar business and found a way to offer some product or service to your client base online, you will be left behind when the world opens back up. So I just want to be really, really blunt with you guys, because I don't want people to think, oh, we can wait this out and it'll all be okay. No, it won't. The world is changing. Online business is here to stay. Zoom meetings are here to stay. People working from home are here to stay. So, we talked about the new normal. This is what it's starting to look like. And you have got to adapt your business to that model, or there will not be business left for you to come back to. Hear me, and I don't mean to be an alarmist, but if you think this is the only time we're going to see an outbreak of this virus and have consequences because of it, you're mistaken. We have conditioned ourselves now to be hypersensitive to these things. And once that sets in, governments are going to be quicker to respond in the future. So you have got to virus-proof your business. So I want to be really upfront with that. Do not go into any of your sales meetings with a preconditioned thought about the outcome being different simply because it's online. There's absolutely no data to support that.
Meredith, let me tell you what worked for me, because I went into this the first time that I did a webinar, and I knew there was going to be 50 or 100 people on it. And I even said to my wife, I said, you know, I can stand in front of 300 or 400 people and be more comfortable. I'm nervous. And the way just for me, and everyone's different, but the way I got through it was realizing that that's in essence, we're doing the same thing. I just can't see all the faces.
Yeah.
I can see 3 faces as everybody else, but we're still talking to 100 people. And that's just how I had to wrestle with it mentally, to learn that it's the same. And to your point, Meredith, we had way more people we did for one of our resorts where the meeting, in my mind, right, should have been in person. We had way more people at the meeting that would ever come in person because it was more convenient. So wrestle with it, practice on your family, your friends, but figure it out. Meredith, can you, and then we will close with some questions. Can you give us one? I mean, what do you want somebody to hang up from this webinar today with? What's the most important thing for you and for Chris?
I think this is the most important thing in any webinar, in any training, any teaching, any seminar that you ever go to. Find one thing that you heard today that is a needle mover for you, meaning that literally when you get off of this call, you can take action on one thing within 5 minutes. And then I want to challenge you to do that, because here's what most people do is they learn, and they learn some more, and then they learn some more. And they think this is all great information, and they never move forward on anything. But the very minute that you take one thing that you learn in this environment and you actually move forward into action mode on it, you change the dynamics of your brain to say, this is not just learning, I'm now doing, and momentum begins to build from action steps. And it's much easier to pick up the phone and make a marketing call, or to schedule a Zoom, or to work with clients when you're in action mode. The longer you wait after we get done today to do that one thing, the harder it gets to do it. So I want to challenge you to find one thing you can move on right away and do it within 5 minutes of the time you get off this webinar.
Chris, I know you did it, but give it to us again.
Well, I would say this, and tapping into her, to what Meredith just said, I would say this. Reinvest yourself. Reinvest yourself in the business you work for. If you're an owner, reinvest in yourself in the business, in your employees. Reinvest yourself in your family during this time. And when we do this, we find our oxygen mask. And maybe that one thing to do for me, whether when you get off this call and you're sitting at your desk going back to work, if you're here in the US, or if you're getting ready to go to bed overseas, here's what you would want to do. Take out a sheet of paper and a pen or a pencil, or grab your tablet or a computer and sit there and say, you know, where do I want to be in the next 5 years? Where do I want to be by the end of this year? Where do I want to be in the next 3 months? Where do I want my business? And start jotting all of those things down, because now what you're doing is you're activating your brain to say, I'm going to get out of this. The world is doing it, still rotate on its axis. There's still going to be a sunrise. There's still going to be a sunset. What can I control now in my world? How can I prep myself up today for success tomorrow? So I would encourage you all to put a little list together about what you see you doing in the next few years, in the next few months, how that translates to your business, if you want to start a business, and or your family. Reinvest yourself. Put your oxygen mask on.
Those of you that I have the privilege of knowing through the master's program at Tiffin, you will recall me saying something to you at the beginning of every class, because I always do it. and we're together for 32 hours over 3 weekends. And these are very, very along the ladder, if you will, experts in their field, people that work for them, hundreds in many cases, just experienced business people. And I tell them, look, if I can leave you with one thing when this class is done, I've done my job. If I can leave you with one thing, and that's what we're doing, just one thing you can grab onto and say, what a great point Meredith made. And I love what Chris said about this. I'm hoping you saw the movie The Martian. If you haven't, go watch it. It's a great movie. There's a scene at the end of The Martian. This is a very happy ending movie because he gets stranded on Mars and they end up rescuing him. But there's a scene at the end, and it's on YouTube, where he's in a class and he's back and he says to the class, look, at some point, everything's going to go south. Everything. And you could argue everything went south for those of us right now in COVID. So he says, look, everything's going to go south. Everything's going to go wrong. And what you do at that point is frankly going to determine whether you live or die. And he said, I was on Mars, and in the case of Mars, because they're astronauts, he said, what you do is you do the math. And you solve one problem, and then you solve another one, and then you solve another one, and then you do something else. And if you do enough of those right, you get to come home. So, and it's not any different for those of you who are watching. Just do the math and make a decision and make yourself a little bit better. And do the things that you know will help you. Maybe you'll be in a totally different business a year from now. Maybe you'll start your own because you've always dreamed of it. Maybe you'll be more virtual. Whatever that is, either you're making the decisions, and what you're hearing from us, either you're making the decisions or your future's controlling you. There are no other options. So that's our encouragement to you. Like I said, we're going to stick around. We're hoping you made a note. Meredith said it. What one thing, when this is over in 10 minutes, so we'll go till 10 after 7 in Romania, 10 after 12 in the East. And answer a couple more questions. And we're coming back, guys. So please tell us what we could focus on in the future, if that could help you. One of the things, and I'm looking in the Q&A, one of the things that I wish I had when I started, I've had this company, my own, for almost 15 years now. Call it an inner circle or a coach or call it what you want, but help. And let me give you an example. So a husband and wife pull into a 7-Eleven, right? She runs in, she's going to grab something in 7-Eleven and come out, and he's just, being rude, and he should have gone in 4, but he didn't. So she comes out of 7-Eleven, she's smiling, she's giggling. She said, oh, the clerk in there was Billy, my old boyfriend in high school. And the husband says, well, I bet you know what I'm thinking. You're glad you married a CEO of a Fortune 500 company and not a store clerk at 7-Eleven. And she said, no, I'm thinking if I'd have married Billy, he'd be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Now, the reason I tell you that, you gotta have people around you that can help you. You cannot do this alone. I can't do it alone. You gotta have, both in personally, you gotta have people, and in business, you have to have people that you're transparent with and that can help you pull the sled in the same direction. Meredith, you'd like one of these questions?
Yeah, I actually want to take a portion of one of these questions.
Okay.
There was a question about, issue versus opportunity to reinvent your business process and the model. And I know we've talked a little bit about some of that, but there's a couple of words at the end of the question that I really want to hit on. And it said employee motivation. So one of the things that, and this is going to apply to you, whether you are an executive for another company or whether you own your own business. Number one, there is a lot of talent in the marketplace right now that is not usually there. There are people who are unemployed at the moment that are typically not available to you in your business. So if you need to hire people, or you will need to hire people, you're going to have access to better quality people than you've probably had access to in a very long time. If you're talking about employee motivation as it pertains to your existing employees, I want to help you with a mindset as it pertains to your team. Now, when I say team, I'm not just talking about employees. I'm also talking about contractors that you work with, vendors that you work with, anybody that you come into contact with that assists in the development and the infrastructure of your business is part of your team. What most people will tell you is that the only way to keep good people, to motivate good people, and to bring them alongside you is to give them more money. What I believe is that if you will invest in your people and you will find out what's important to them in their life and partner with them to help them achieve their goals, that you will have partners that will help you with your vision for years and years to come. People are not always motivated by money. There are some who are, but the vast majority of people, even though it may seem like that on the surface, there is something else that is driving them to get up and go to work for you every day. I want to give you an example. So my catering company has been in business for 14 years, and 3 years ago this summer, we landed a massive contract. I'm talking a huge government contract. We were feeding 4,000 soldiers a day, 2 meals a day for 30 days. It was huge. And we knew that it was going to take long hours. My staff was showing up to work at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning to have breakfast ready. We were there until 10 o'clock at night after serving dinner. They were working very long hours in rough conditions. We're in Texas. It was summer. It was over 100 degrees outside, and our kitchen and the dining rooms were in tents in desert conditions. Not great for anyone. But what was interesting is I knew that our staff would know that this was a really beneficial contract for us financially. And after the first week or so, I came in and found a list. And this list was the reasons that all of our core staff was willing to show up early and stay late. It was items that they were saving for. It was vacations they wanted to go on, cars they wanted to buy, homes they wanted to buy, different things for different families. And I'll give you an example of just one. We had a high school student that was working for us, and she wanted to be a photographer. Now, she was saving for this very expensive camera. It was about $1,000. And so that's why she was willing to work the hours she was working. What was really neat is at the end of that exercise, at the end of the 30 days, I was able to go to her and say, hey, how much do you have saved for your camera? And she said, I've got about half. We were able to match the other half so she could buy her camera. And then the first time that I told that story, I hired her to be the photographer to come take pictures at the event. We had other families that we got to send on dream vacations to Disney World. We had other families that we were able to buy a month's worth of groceries. We were able to do all of those things because we took the time to go to each one of them and say, hey, what are you really saving for? What's important to you right now? What would mean something to your family? Because if I took it upon myself to think what would be important to me and gave that to them, it wouldn't mean anything to them because that's not what they value. So if you will come alongside your people and look, economic times could be hard right now, okay? So if you can't afford to do those generous things at the moment, that's fine. What's important to your people is knowing that, number one, you care enough to find out what's important to them. And number two, you're willing to walk alongside them to help them achieve their dreams. Because in the long run, all anybody actually cares about, you guys may have heard this statement before, it's the radio station WIIFM, what's in it for me? That's what they're there for. So if you as the business owner, the manager, the executive, whatever your role is, will take the time to really find out what's important to the people who are part of your team or your partners and help them in that process, you will gain a loyalty from them that you had no idea could exist. We work in the food service industry. These are not the highest paying jobs in the world, but I have people who have been with me for over 10 years. Because I help them make sure that their family has what they need. And those are the most important things as you go through this process. So when you talk about employee motivation, you need to understand that that motivation is different for every employee. And if you've got a large staff where you can't personally get to every one of those people, then you get to the next tier, you get to the managers. And you know what? You empower them to go do the same thing for their teams. And get it to where that company has a culture of finding out what motivates every employee so that they as a company can become the cheerleaders for them as they move in the direction of their goals.
Hey, Chris, I made a comment earlier that at least early on, and it is early because our company was not positioned well enough at the onset of all this virtually, although we're trying to change that. We're seeing customers still buying, Chris. And now I'm in I call it the vacation business because that's what people do. That's where we are. But is that what you're seeing? I mean, how do you think this impacts my propensity to buy, Chris, or how the customers are going to react? I mean, what are you seeing? Because you coach businesses in all kinds of fields. I mean, are you seeing any trends from the customer standpoint?
Yeah, there's been some comments about the economy and global struggles. Let me just say this: there's a word out there that I think, if I do my math right, it's 9 letters, and it's called opportunity. And when we take the opportunity to work within a struggle, Joe, you said it best: just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. We all struggle. It's what we do within that struggle. So there are people that are buying, there are people that are anxious to get out of their home, there are people that are anxious to support and an economy, if you will. Case in point, just so you know, because of your technology statement, and I'll tie this in, even schools have pivoted, have adapted, where within maybe 2 weeks' time at the most, they've gone from in-class teaching to online learning. That's amazing. That's remarkable. So why can't our businesses do the same thing, to Meredith's point, where more businesses are going to be online? So what we want to do is we want to take care of that opportunity. Best Buy put out a statement that laptops and webcams were out of stock for weeks when this all hit, because people were understanding that they needed to do something a little bit different. Their business still needed to move. The economy is rocking and rolling. It really is. It's just your perspective and how you're willing to work through this struggle, and that will help identify what your new perspective becomes, right? We're doing this instead of flying over to Romania, we're doing this via Zoom. This is amazing. We can have all of the people on here that we want. Everybody's saving dollars. The economy is still going to move because we're providing value to the listeners and to one another. And it's going to be helpful for our businesses, either whether we're owners and or employees. So Joe, to I guess summarize my statement is people are buying, and they're going to continue to buy. That's why for most part, the world economies are helping prop that up financially. They want people to buy. They want consumerism. People need things such as toilet paper, back to the very beginning point. We need things, and we want things, and we want to live life even if there's certain parameters around it.
Marius, I was going to wrap this up. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything to close. We told them we would take a few more questions till 10 after, but I can tell you, for me, it's an absolute honor. I'm hoping that I can drag Meredith and Chris over to Romania at some point. I know I would enjoy that.
I hope that you won't need to drag them. I hope that they will come. Yeah, so I'm sure that we will have you in Romania pretty soon. We do not know yet, but dealing with the unknown became easier, at least for me. I'm so happy I had the chance to be a spectator and not so much a panelist, because I had some very good insights. And in the same time, I have to be honest, I have wrote down some quotes that for sure I will use to motivate myself, to motivate my staff. That lately, by the way, the staff that I'm working with, it's not anymore so, I'm not considering them that much as employees, but as friends, because they have been with me in all of this struggle, and it's tough. It's tougher for them than it is for me. by the way. They are tough moments. In the same time as Chris wanted to let's say, clear up the sky for us at the end and make us see the sun, yeah, people are buying. People want to reinvest in themselves. People are having needs. People are eager to consume. I have seen some questions in the Q&A. I'm letting everybody know that we will answer to those questions. You will answer to those questions through email. So the email that they have provided, you will answer to those emails. In the same time, I want everybody to know that they can contact us at office@tiffinmba.ro in case they would like to have a, I don't know, a personal meeting with any of you. And thank you very much for coming to this on-live webinar. We think that we will start having at least monthly session with you. And if anybody from the audience has anything to any subject or any topic that they would like us to organize webinars in the future, just let us know, and we will try to do our best.
And they expect an email from you, Marius?
Sorry?
Can the attendees expect an email from you?
Yes, they will. We will follow up on this, especially to the ones that had questions, but not only to them, because we would like to organize a survey in order to know what topics are they most interested in and how did we perform. So.
And which one of the panelists was the most handsome, right?
Yeah, thanks God I'm not in.
Thank you, guys. I hope you in Romania a great rest of your evening. It's been a pleasure. I know it has for Chris and Meredith too. We're honored just to be a part of your world today.
Yep, thank you
very much, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Have a great day.